definition for faith is one of many, especially embracing the Christian ideals, is a confident belief in the trustworthiness of God or Jesus. Do we trust God when all looks bad? When symbolically the Egyptian army is coming up on us and we're trapped at the Red Sea on three sides where we can't go anywhere. And part of it's because God has even led us to that very place. Do we trust Him? Do we trust Him when the waves are coming over the edges of the boat and it's overwhelming and the outlook doesn't look good? Do we trust Him? Is He a God which truly sees and knows our situation and has the power to provide what is necessary? Is He worthy of our praise, our trust, our faith, and our unquestioning following wherever He leads us? We're going to look at that today. 2 weeks ago, we started the series within this series, which was the second Exodus series. And it started with the feeding of the 5,000 in chapter 14, verses 13 through 21, where also Jesus walks on water and then He heals many. Those three things end up happening. And this happens right after Jesus hears that John the Baptist was just killed. And he realizes that his journey to the cross now must begin. This will all take place in Jerusalem, which last week we learned is the same as Mount Moriah, the same place where Isaiah was offered up to God by Abraham. Last week, we learned that sin is at the heart of the matter. Desperate position of humanity is in sin, and all are lost. Jesus is the only one that can help, but He is the awesome healer, the Son of God. And this week's scripture is going to mirror our first sermon of the series, reinforcing certain truths that we've already seen, and yet also we'll have some differences purposely highlighted in this section as well. We're also going to see that this is going to be a summary of faith and healing parts that we've seen earlier on in the Matthew Gospel. So today we're going to look at three sections which expose the important issue of faith with Jesus. First section is the faith of the Canaanite woman. I got to say, I have a lot of favorite passages in the Bible, but they're not all my favorite. This is definitely one of my favorites, though, no doubt. So, it says, "And Jesus went away from there, and He withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon.' But He did not answer her a word." Now, went away, this word came out. Ex in Greek is out, and erkomai is the Greek word for to come. So, to come out of something, ex erkomai. That's important. Exodus language, He came out. From there is Gennesaret, which is a town in Galilee, so it's North Israel is where He's coming out from. And that reminds me of Deuteronomy 6:23, when Moses says to Israel, he says that God brought you out from there, meaning Egypt, that He might bring you in. He brought you out from there that He might bring you in and give us the land that He swore to give our fathers. This word withdrew means took refuge. He departed to. And Tyre and Sidon is an area in Phoenicia, which is up in the upper left corner. Sidon is another 20 miles up north from there. These are important cities in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And Ezekiel 26 through 28 is a bunch of prophecy that Ezekiel is talking about against Tyre and Sidon. And it's of the destruction that Nebuchadnezzar is going to bring to them. We'll come back to that in a second. Even Jesus, back in Matthew 11, verses 20 through 22, it says in that passage, "Then Jesus began to denounce the cities where most of his mighty works had been done, because they did not repent. Because they saw his mighty works, his miracles, yet they did not recognize him as being from God." He says, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if mighty works are done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, then they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you." That's pretty extreme. They're going to have it easy compared to you, considering what happened to Tyre and Sidon. Sidon is named after the firstborn of Canaan. The firstborn son of Canaan. Canaan was cursed by Noah. We saw back in Genesis 10:5. Canaan is cursed by Noah for looking at his nakedness when he became intoxicated from his wine, from his garden. And he's cursed by Noah. Tyre is talked about in Ezekiel from 26 to 28, and summarizing it basically is saying it's exposing a city of great pride and beauty. And it says that your trade and your riches, your technology of humanity and military power has made you turn against God. Your pride is overwhelming. And in the midst of the sea, it says you will sink because they're on an island, basically. You will sink. You will fall into the pit, it even says. We see that last week in last week's sermon. And it says, because your heart is proud, the heart of the sea will consume you. You are only a man, and you are not God, though you think you are a God. In fact, in Ezekiel 28, verses 11 through 19, Ezekiel even makes the likeness of Tyre to Satan. He says, "You were perfect in beauty and became proud, and violence filled you, and I cast you to the ground away from the mountain of God." And all watched in horror as an example. So Jesus came out of the country of his people, of Israel, and he went and took refuge in this region of the outsiders, those that are cursed, Canaan and Tyre and Sidon. So a Canaanite woman came out. In Greek, the word exerkomai, again. What it's basically showing, Jesus came out, this woman came out. They collided together. They met. Similar to other previous encounters, also two people. You see the two men with demons which the demons were cast into the pigs back in Matthew 8, verses 28 through 29. It says, "When he came to the other side," which is Jesus, "to the country of Gadarenes, two demon-possessed men met him, coming out of their tombs so fierce that no one could pass that way. And behold, they cried out, 'What have you to do with us, O Son of God?'" Interesting that the demons know that he's the Son of God, right? "Have you come here to torment us before the time?" So coming out and crying out, just like the woman in our passage here. They're in a foreign land, in the Gentile land, and a demonic presence is also here as well. Two blind men healed in Matthew 9, 27 through 30. It says, "And Jesus passed on from there. Two blind men followed him, crying out, 'Have mercy on us, Son of David.'" So Son of David, just like our woman who cries out. "When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, 'Do you believe that I am able to do this?' And they said to him, 'Yes, Lord.' And he touched their eyes, saying, 'According to your faith, let it be done to you.' And their eyes were opened." Son of David recognizes that Jesus is the Messiah promised to come through the line of King David. He's to bring peace. He is bring salvation also to God's people. But she's not an Israelite, yet she's calling him the Son of David. Remember, blindness was a big issue in last week's session for Israel, the people that were the experts on the law. The fact that this woman is approaching Jesus for healing, should remind us of the woman who also bled for 12 years, a number of weeks back in Matthew 9, 20 through 22. And all that was going through her head was, I must get to Jesus. If I just touch him, I know I'll be healed. Even if I'm caught, I will absolutely be shamed. Doesn't matter. Nothing's more important than getting to Jesus. This woman in our text is also very desperate, and her child is in great danger because they're possessed by a demonic. She's begging for Jesus to help her, but Jesus didn't answer her a word. He ignored her, and this should make us wonder why. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she's crying out after us." And he answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." The disciples asked Jesus to send her away. Send her away is Exodus language, to free her, set her free. Same word used as the freeing of the feeding of the 5,000 in the beginning of our sermon series. For she is crying out after us. She's clearly persistent. She's loud. She's annoying to them. And the disciples are greatly lacking in compassion here. Jesus answers, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." This is a double negative, so I was absolutely only sent to the house of Israel, the lost sheep. Lost sheep are referred to back in Matthew 10, 6 through 8. These 12, the disciples, Jesus sends out. And he instructs them, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, and cast out demons." Oh, that's exactly what we're dealing with here. Hesed is a Hebrew word, and it is one of the main words that describes who God is. In fact, his name, when he reveals it to Moses, he says Hesed twice in that. Covenant faithfulness, absolutely reliable, completely, totally trustworthy. He has a covenant with them, and he will not fail in that at all. His first commitment to the people that he has covenant with, Israel. And that's what Jesus is confirming here. But even in the Exodus, you see in the first Exodus that there are others that went out with Israel, and they were not Israelites, but they went with as well. We see in John 4:22 with the woman at the well that Jesus also talks about this. He says, "You worship what you do not know, but we worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews." All of this is the same thing. What Jesus means by that is this, is that God's got the whole world and he's created it all. And he does reveal himself in many different ways, in many different places. But salvation is only coming through the Jews. Salvation, he picked one group of people that he can put a magnifying glass on and say, this is where I'm dealing with the issue of sin. This is where my salvation comes through, are these people here. So therefore, my covenant goes with them first, and it will come through them, and then out to the rest of the world. But this is what Jesus is showing, that he has a commitment to these people first. But she came and knelt before him. This is not strong enough. She fell in reverence and worshiped him, is what this word means. She fell to her knees and worshiped him. She was extremely desperate. The Lord help me. What she's saying here is, you are my master. Please come to my rescue. I know that you can help me. And this is in the likeness of Matthew 8, verses 2 through 3, where it says, a leper came to Jesus and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing. Be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. So you would expect Jesus would give in here. And he answers, it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she said, yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." And Jesus answered her, "Oh, woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And her daughter was healed instantly. Children of Israel are those that God has covenant with. Those are the children. Children is Israel, the people of Israel. And we see that Jesus is feeding Israel just like God did with them in the Exodus, with the manna every day. He's also healing the sick as well. Dogs are not a good thing. They're the scavengers. They're related to garbage in the Bible. The word actually has little dog, so it makes it a little better. It probably has kind of it's implying that like a pet dog kind of thing, but that's still not good. Still not. You're still a dog. A dog's a dog. Who wants to be called a dog? No one. No one wants to be called a dog. Not when it means what Israel put with it. Garbage. Listen to her humble and submissive and very wise answer. I'm going to paraphrase or put into it what these words even are meaning. She says, "Yes, Lord." This is the third time she's called him Lord. "I realize that I am a dog, and it would not be right to feed me with the bread designated for the children. But even the little dogs, those who follow and are loyal to their master, feed on the crumbs, the excess that's left over, which fall from their master's table." She's saying to him, "I know you have more than enough. You have plenty, even though I'm not one of those people that you have covenant with. You have more than enough to overflow. Even the crumb would be enough for me." That's faith. Jesus is very impressed. "Great is your faith." Again, in the likeness to the blind men, Jesus says, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their eyes were opened. In our text, "Be it done as you desire." She was healed instantly. And in Matthew 8:5-13, to the centurion also who had incredible faith, Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. Here's one of the most important things to highlight, though. Part of why our series has to be the second Exodus, and it starts with the the feeding of the 5,000, and then Jesus walking on water, because this is absolutely in opposition to Peter walking on water. In Matthew 14:22-33, Jesus says to Peter, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" This is his disciple. Of this woman who is a Canaanite woman, she's an outsider. He says, "O woman, how great is your faith." One could say even a little faith can walk on water for a bit, or faith as a mustard seed can move mountains. Even if it is impulsive, fearful, or maybe even prideful. But also, as we see here, what great faith looks like from the woman. Women were not held up as the elite, especially back then. So this are two totally polar opposites. You have the disciple who follows Jesus and is lacking in faith, and the woman of an outsiding people that do not have covenant with God, and she has awesome faith. And she's exalted. Faith, action, following. This is living with God, walking with Him. How much faith do we have in a parachute and the one who packed that parachute when we jump out of an airplane? A lot. No faith, no jump. No action. Our lives regularly expose our faith in Jesus or our lack of. And God will often put us in places which test our faith. How have we responded to those? Do we get out of the boat? Or do we find Jesus and fall at his feet humbly and submissively and worship, knowing that he is the only one who can help, truly? Or do we doubt him and live in continual defeat? Second section is faith in the healer. So Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee, and he went up on the mountain and sat down there, and great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, the many others, and they put them at his feet, and he healed them. So he went on. He left from that place, and he passed over from that place. This is Exodus language, passed over. He walked beside. This word means, it came from that word erkomai. So he came from the Sea of Galilee. So he either walked beside it or he crossed it. Either way, we see that he came back from Tyre. He either crossed the sea. He's over where that circle is now. This is right where he was in the feeding of the 5,000 a chapter back. That's also outside of Israel area. So he crossed the sea. He goes up a mountain, and the mountain absolutely symbolizes Mount Sinai as well. Moses led Israel out of Egypt. They crossed the sea, split it though, and then Moses went up a mountain to get the revelation of God so that his people could know him and reflect him, be holy. We see a similar thing that's happening here. It is supposed to mirror that. So after the splitting of the sea, in the first Exodus, they encounter the bitter water. And he says, as he cried to the Lord answered him, showed him a log. The word is a tree or wood. And he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. And there the Lord made for them a statute and a rule. And there he tested them. And he basically says that if you follow me, everything that I'm telling you, it says, then I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer. I am the one who heals you. But follow me. This is a guide to the tree of life, absolutely. Follow, and I will heal you. Follow me. Isn't that not the call that Jesus has to all of us? Follow me, and I will heal you. I will give you life. The Lord often leads us out of the cities and into the wilderness to reveal himself, to show that he can and will provide for us. Why is it in the wilderness? Because we can't provide for ourselves out there. That's why. We can't do it ourselves. When I can do it myself and God says, let me help you, we say, nah, I got this. I don't need your help. I'm good. I'm cool. In the wilderness, we say, God, if you don't intervene, I'm going to die. You have to get involved. The crowds came to Jesus. All who were sick were laid at his feet, like the Canaanite woman who fell at Jesus' feet and worshipped him. He healed them all. He restored them is what this word means. He attended to them. So that the crowd wondered. The word here actually is marveled. When they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. This word marveled was used 3 other times earlier in the book of Matthew. The first one is with the centurion in Matthew 8:10, where Jesus heard the centurion's faith and he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. So Jesus marveled. The second one is when Jesus calms the storm with the disciples, Matthew 8:26 through 27. And he said to them, why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Then he rose to rebuke the winds of the sea, and there was a great calm, and the men marveled, saying, what sort of a man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? A divine man. And the third one is Matthew 9:32 through 33, where it says, "As they were going away, behold, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him. And when the demon had been cast out, the mute man spoke, and the crowds marveled, saying, 'Never was anything like this seen in Israel.'" So they're seeing a fulfillment of Isaiah verses 35, 2 through 8, where it talks about the Messiah will come to heal and bring salvation. It says that they will see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God, strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. It talks about giving the blind eyes to see and so forth. And eventually it says, "A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk on the way." The way of the Lord is what it's saying. To those who follow the Lord, they will receive the healing, the salvation that he brings. In Matthew 11, 4 and 5, Jesus refers to that exact passage when he's referring to John's disciples and they come to him. And John says, "Are you the one to come, or is there going to be another?" And Jesus answers them. He says, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news preached to them." Jesus is the one to come. He is the great healer. He is the Son of God and the Son of David, like we saw in the very last section. All who come to him will be healed. And Jesus has been called the great physician by some theologians. His requirement for healing is faith. He requires us to step out. The faith follows him wherever he goes. Into the wilderness is often where, again, he reveals himself to us. If we fall at his feet and worship, if we are willing to follow, he will heal us. And that does stretch us a lot, because I know that there are places where some even that are here that are in very difficult situations. And it's very real, and it's overwhelming. But over and over and over again, God says, if you follow me, I am with you. Do not fear. Do not fear, for I will be with you. The presence of God is what it's all about. Are we willing to detach ourselves from the world in order to receive the everlasting life that Jesus offers us? It's what he's doing when he brings us to the wilderness, to detach us from the world so that we can have the peace of Christ dwelling within us. Do we trust him enough that we are willing to step out into the unknown, only knowing that what God says, that he will meet us there? And the last section is lacking faith in the provider. Isn't it interesting that you would think the disciples would be exalted over and over again as these people, great, holy, awesome people, but yet over and over and over again, there are some places that show, some places that they do very, very well, but we see their failure over and over and over again. And what's even more shocking is that most of them either wrote the Gospels or were very influential in the ones that did write it. They gave the stamp of approval. Yep. They wrote this stuff, and it didn't put them in a good light. It was truth. And it should tell all of us that if they can do it, any of us can do it. So then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I'm unwilling to send them away hungry. I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way." This is the second account of Jesus feeding the many. And historical Jesus people that are looking for what did he really say, what are just myths and what are the reality of what happened, they miss the point. They miss the point. They're those that fall into the pit. They get deceived because they're looking at the wrong things. The different numbers show us these are absolutely not the same account. These are two different accounts that happened. And there are some different details. So, the disciples should pass this test pretty good, right? It's already happened. You would think that they're like, oh, we've been here before. Not going to fall for the where are we going to get our food Jesus trick again. I know how to deal with this situation. 3 days is symbolic. Numbers are often symbolic. I think they are accurate, but also at the same point, they are symbolic. 3 has a sense of significance and expectation, not a coincidence, and something is about to happen that is very significant. You see that with the issue with Balaam and the donkey, with the angel that runs into him 3 times, Elijah with 3 times of pouring the water on top of the offering before it went up, Gethsemane with Jesus, prays 3 times to the Lord, to the Father, Jonah 3 days in the belly of the fish. Something big is about to happen here. Sense of completeness also comes with the number of 3. The fullness, Trinity itself. Jesus with his disciples 3 years. Jonah was supposed to witness to Nineveh 3 days' journey. That means all of the city. So they had listened to all of his teaching, completely surrendered. They're followed out into the wilderness. They've not eaten anything. And like I said before, Jesus is unwilling to send them away hungry. He's not willing to do it. When we commit to God, he commits to us. I'll say that again. When we commit to God, he commits to us. He's not willing to abandon us. He's not willing to leave us as orphans, as he talks about in John 14:18. And in John 14:23, Jesus says, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. So the disciples said to him, where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed this great crowd? And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? They said 7 and a few small fish. Where we get enough to feed in this desolate place, this place of solitude, this desert, this place of loneliness is what desolate place means. In Numbers 11, verse 21 and 23, we see Moses is dealing with a similar situation. God tells Moses when all these people are grumbling, and he says, I'm going to give them so much meat that it'll be coming out of their nostrils. I'm going to give them so much meat because they said all they have is this manna to eat in the desert here. And this is what Moses says. He says, I'm going to give them enough meat for a month. This is Moses' response. Moses said, the people among whom I number 600,000 on foot. So that's just the men also. So somewhere around 2 million total people that are with them, including women and children. And you have said, I will give them meat that they will eat a whole month. Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them and be enough for them? Or shall all the fish in the sea be gathered together for them and be enough for them? And God says to Moses, is the Lord's hand shortened? Does the Lord have alligator arms as he reaches into his bag of abundance? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. Now you will see whether I am worthy of your faith or not. It is an issue of faith. Do we believe that nothing is too great for Jesus? How much bread do you have? Reminds us of the lack in the desert. 7 is symbolic for completeness. 7 days of creation. Same God is about to take all these people that he had among them and give them more than enough to fill them completely. Their need is again exposed. before God acts, to be sure that we are clearly aware of our lacking and desperate situation, and so that we recognize his divine provision. And we don't say, oh, thankfully all those quail just happened to come in. Because that's what we normally would do, right? So in directing the crowd to sit on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. He sat down and ate with them. They had fellowship together. You see that in Exodus 24, 9 through 11, where all the elders of Israel sat and they fellowshiped with God. They beheld God, it says, and ate and drank. Jesus gave thanks and broke the items. He gave them to the disciples. The disciples gave them to the crowds. Isn't it amazing that God doesn't need humans to do his work, but he wants to include them in his work? It is an honor to serve the living God. We get a chance to watch him work, to watch him do his miracles. When we follow him, he does this. And they ate and they were satisfied, all of them. And they took up the 7 baskets, broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. So that's just the men. So you probably got at least 8,000 that were there, minimum. And after sending them away in the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of Magadan. All ate and were satisfied. We see the similarities as far as in the feeding of the 5,000, where he sent away the people. He got into the boat. He didn't get in the boat in the first section, but he sent the disciples away in the boat, and they go to the other side, which we see they go back into the land of Israel, into Galilee. As we walk with Jesus, he teaches us in each moment, and the Bible lives and breathes in us. If we just want it to be a theological thing, an intellectual thing, then that's all it is. It's just up here. There's no life that really breathes through it. It will challenge us. It'll bring us into the wilderness. It'll make us have to rely on God. It'll make us have to decide whether we are going to have faith like this Canaanite woman of saying, I know that only you can heal me. Help me. Please help me. If we don't learn from a former lesson, be sure this lesson will come back again and again until it's etched on our heart. Here we see that the Lord is the trustworthy provider for his people who follow him. He leads them through the wilderness. He is the provider. He is the healer. The Heavenly Father provides for his children, and the children can include outsiders who follow Jesus. How well do we know this? Do we panic when we're desperate? Our first question should not be, where is God? But rather, are we right with God? Are we following him? And if not, repent and turn to him with all of our heart, and we will find him. But learn not to stray. Remain close at all times, for when we stray is where Satan attacks and prevails over us. So is God worthy of our praise, our trust, our faith, our unquestioning following wherever he leads us? I would say yes. The wilderness is where we learn that we must rely on God or we will not make it. Apart from God, we would die in the wilderness, but he is our healer and our provider. He brought us out from there to bring us in close. He is with us, and we have nothing to fear. Louis Giglio is a pastor, and in one of his books he said that our worship of God gives insight into our vision of him. If our worship is small, it's because our vision of God is small, tiny, not that important. But if our vision of him is awesome, then our worship of him will be awesome as well. because that's how we see him, as an awesome God, as a God that does not get involved, as a God that is trustworthy and reliable and has covenant faithfulness to those who follow him. So the proposition is this: as we walk with Jesus, we must increase the strength. We must increase in the strength of our faith in him. As we walk, if we're walking with him, he's going to bring us to places that are going to challenge us. And the whole point is for us to learn to lean on him and to reach for him. And he will meet us in those places. So as we go, as Moses' faith increased as he went, he had places of falling also. But you see a man that really was kind of a coward at the beginning of the walk with him, for the most, at least the beginning from the burning bush element to the end, those last 40 years. But as he walks with God, his faith gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And yeah, he has a couple of places where he loses it. But he's reminded of how great God is. Like with the provision of all the quail there, where he says, even if all the fish in the sea would be given to us, would it be enough? And God says, do you doubt me? Nothing's too big for God. Nothing is too big for God. Amen? Amen.